Hello, and thank you for taking part in the Teaching Primary Biology courses. I really hope that they've been useful for you and that you've gone away with feeling much better about subject knowledge and strategies for teaching those topics in your primary schools. Today I'm here to answer a few questions that we've had along the way of the course. If there was anything else, do pop a little note in the questions below, and we'll hopefully be able to get back to you. The first question I have here is from Ash, who had said, in the current scenario, we are relying on online classes with minimal or no practical resources available at homes. How can we fill this gap in the upcoming year? When life will return to normal, hopefully? Do we need to expansively revise, or can we just add one or two background lessons to serve the purpose? Well, start off with, Ash, I would say really do beware of cramming. Actually cramming all of that learning into just the following year can actually be quite detrimental for both teachers and for the children that you've got in school. It can lead to burnout. You're probably likely to find that learning doesn't stick, and that there's going to be there's less time to focus on actually teaching the vocabulary and getting those lessons practical and working on the skills as well. There also does run a massive risk of actually widening gaps if you do that as well, because you're likely to find that the children that have managed to engage with some science at home are likely to move on much further than the children that haven't, if we're trying to cram everything just into the next year. All the resources that are out there at the moment to help support with gap or recovering planning, whichever your school is calling it, tend to suggest more of a long-term process, possibly up to 2-3 years, to help actually cover the gaps in primary science. And then that needs careful planning to ensure that we do have that full coverage and to make sure that the teachers are picking it up 2 or 3 years down the line. In saying that, though, when it comes to you working scientifically, that probably does need a little bit more of a push in that following year, and is something that we can work on a little bit more, because it's that does tend to be a 2-year rolling programme in terms of what the national curriculum is asking for. And also, if you've got a current year 6 class as well, they are obviously going to need a little bit more support to get that learning in there, because they have no more years for catching up. And there's going to have to be close conversations with the secondary schools that they move to, so that if there is still gaps, that they're aware of that as well. So what is suggested is that you do have these longer term catch-up programs. And there are 2 really super resources out there that are available to help you with this. The first one that I came across was one through the PSTT, Primary Science Teaching Trust website. And they have their regional mentor, Kate Redhead, actually produced a little video and put some examples on their website to show how she would work with recovery planning in her school. And I think that gives you a really good idea about how to put that in as a long-term plan into your school. There is also the Calm Approach for Curriculum Catch-Up, which has been on the Science Across the City website. That has had a lot of good feedback from schools across the country. And on that website, you can find that there are multiple documents that are all designed to help support you in making those plans for getting your recovery planning in there. And there's lots of support available on that website as well. So I hope that does help you a little bit. As I said at Ash, I would just be very, very, very wary of trying to cram it all into 1 year for all of the year groups. That learning is not likely to be very substantial if you do that. Linked with that question, we had a question as well from Sahili, who has asked if we can suggest anything for home learning for children of 9 to 11 years of age. And also asking that, is it important that we actually follow up any modules that were done at home with learning resources or projects? Well, again, Sahili, there's some great resources that have actually been produced over this period of that we're currently under, this pandemic period, to help us with our home learning with primary science. The important thing with those resources is that they're very manageable, so that actually parents can help their children with these at home, that it's not taking too many resources, and that it's not too big of an ask for them, because any big long-term projects are unlikely to happen at home at the moment. They also need to be able to support the parents in both their subject knowledge and in the vocabulary as well, so we're not aiming to get any more misconceptions from this learning that they're doing at home. Some of the resources that are out there include some that we've created through STEM Learning. So STEM Learning did produce some status for STEM sheets, which were used quite readily over the particularly lockdown period 1. Now, those activities were actually created so that it would be an activity that could be used by a child of any primary age. The thought being that a parent wouldn't want to have something different to do for a 5-year-old child than they would their 7-year-old. So it was something that could be taken at the level that child is at. Those were all STEM-based activities, and again, very manageable in terms of the equipment that it was needed, and very minimal as well in subject knowledge and support you'd need to provide for the parents. Since then, we've also written our status for science sheets. Now, these are really useful because they look at the topics from the English National Curriculum, and for each year group as well. And we have a sheet which has got the vocabulary on it and the key learning. So if these are sent home, the parents have got that in front of them and know exactly what is the words that they should be teaching their children for that year group and the actual key learning that they should be teaching them. There are then 4 activities on each sheet that help parents to be able to teach that topic or to help to engage the children in that topic. Now, those activities are likely to need follow-up in school, which is the other question that you asked. And no matter what resources we're talking about, you will find that children will need that follow-up in school, which I'll come back to in just a second. The PSTT, Primary Science Teaching Trust, as well, did some resources that were for home learning for over this period and are still worth getting your hands on. So the 2 that I would suggest that are great in terms of manageability for home are your Science Fun at Home sheets and the Science for One activities. I think all of those ones have some great advice for parents on them, as well as manageable activities that the children can be doing. Now, in terms of that follow-up, as I said, I would really recommend that you do have that follow-up back in school. Now, that's simply because not all the children that you have that are going to be doing that home learning will have covered the topics in the same way. They won't have done it to the same extent. Some might not have done it at all or just brushed past it rather than actually looking at it in any depth. So it's a real importance at the minute to make sure that whenever you're back in school, that you are getting your pre-assessments in there, that you are actually assessing the children to see where they are for each of the topics as you're starting them. And it might even be that it's session by session where the children are. And that's simply because you are going to have quite a wide variety of needs that those children are going to be facing, depending on the amount that they've engaged with science at home over this period. So that those pre-assessments really do become essential for aiding your planning to know how to address the needs of everybody in your class. Okay, so I hope that helps you out a little bit there, Sahili. We also had a question from Ash, who asked, how often should we follow up or revise vocabulary referring to a particular topic? Well, there's no definite answer to this, Ash, but I would say that this is a really important thing to be doing as much as possible. I've had a lot of conversations with schools that are particularly high with English as a foreign language children in their schools, and they are telling me that at the moment they're finding, particularly with the home learning that's happened as well, that they are really hammering vocabulary at pretty much the beginning of every science session. So their starters might be vocabulary games, revising the stuff that has gone before, so it sets the children up for that session that they're about to do. And I think that is a super suggestion that actually we can be using across the board in any primary schools across the country. But in terms of just generally, I think being able to go back and revise topics is really essential for children to keep these ideas fresh in their heads and keep that learning sticky and active in their brains. And there's loads of ways that we can be doing that. We've talked quite a lot, or we do tend to talk about Explorify a lot on these courses, and that's because it's a great free resource that actually gives you some super suggestions, some super activities that you can be using to actually get children engaged in this type of activity where they're using dialogue. Now, those activities can be linked with the topics that you're doing, but if you take that outside of your science lesson and throw it in, at another point in the day, then actually it could be used as a revision for looking back at any topic that you wanted to. And the children really enjoy that. They enjoy revisiting the things that they've done before, especially with those Explorify style activities. It could be done through sending things home with children. So it could be homeworks. It could be sending home those starters for science sheets that we talked about. Now, if parents have got those at home, there is more likelihood that they will be referring to those words and carrying out those activities and actually giving you some backup in school as well. Really helps as a little revision every now and again. It could be that you're thinking about creating a class science dictionary, which is something I think we did talk about in the course. You can actually create, your class's own science dictionary, or it could be their dictionary that they pass through school and add to it all the way along. Now, that could be something that is out on display and that the children could go into and use, from time to time. And it could be something that you're going into, picking a word of the week, a word of the day to go back at and have another little look at and try to remember what that word was from before. But similarly, we've talked about vocabulary games that you could be throwing at the children as well, which I know, again, we've talked about previously on the course. But that doesn't necessarily need to be always with the topic that you're doing right now. It could be a quick end of the day, quick vocab game that is related to a different topic. And in primary schools, our displays that we've got around the classroom can be really useful for this sort of thing as well. Use those, display your vocabulary, and get children surrounded by that. We've also had a question through from Howard, who has also linked in with this vocabulary topic and has asked for any recommendations of resources that can also help teach vocabulary in primary science. Now, there's a number of things out there. I've related to it a few times in this question and answers, but our starters for science are a really good indicator of the vocabulary that's needed for each of the topics, for each of the year groups. And they also give the key learning there, which would help to explain that language as well. And that can be used by teachers as much as it can be used as a resource to send home. Similarly, there is the plan assessment topic matrix sheets. They are really fantastic at pulling out the key learning and looking at the vocabulary that we need to be teaching for each of those topics. And they're fantastic for helping you with your planning of your primary science. The final one is the Explorify website again. On the Explorify website, they have now created a toolkit on there that is both for teachers and for science leaders. And on there, you can find as well a vocabulary list. Now, all of those can help you with progression as well, because you can be looking across those and seeing the differences between the vocab that is used year on year or from key stage to key stage, depending on which resource it is that you're looking for. So thank you all very much. I hope that that has been helpful, and I hope that it has ended your journey with our biology courses in a very positive light. Please do join us on some of our other courses that we have available here on both FutureLearn, or we would love to see you come along when we can to our National Centre in York or across to our Science Learner partnerships. Thanks again.